Ever since I was a kid, I've always been very empathetic. I've always cared a lot about other things. I remember once I was playing basketball as a kid. I shot the basketball, missed, and I hit a worm, and it killed the worm. And I felt very, very bad about that. In high school, I accidentally hit a rabbit while driving to school. And I say all these things as someone who's been out of high school for nearly a decade. And so, when you care so much, you hold a great sorrow, because the greater you feel, the greater the sorrow. Because sometimes it's hard to let go of things, right? And I grew up in a broken household, so I found myself a little bit messed up growing up. I had, I think, 12 or 13 different jobs before I was 22, and I got fired from all of them. And so I went through a period of my life where I went to discover what was wrong with myself, and I read hundreds of books about trauma, psychology, and all these things. And I found that the more I understood people, the more I learned, the more I realized how trauma and the brain functions. I also studied all the religions, and that teaches a lot about people as well. And I realized that once you know these things, you can see right through people. And the issue is, when you care about others so deeply, the more you see, the more you realize that most people are self-defeating themselves off their own traumas, and they don't even realize it. The unconscious behavior most people exhibit is really quite disheartening to see. And so I found the greater the knowledge, the more the pain, the greater I feel, the greater the sorrow. And so to be in this world and not be cold is truly a deeply, deeply challenging task. You know, for example, right? Why do people drink alcohol? You can say to have fun, you can say to whatever, right? But it's to be more socially capable. Most of the time, at least. Not always. Some people drink alone, but the majority of times people drink to be more social. And why do they need it to be more social? It's because they cannot do what they want sober. They are not socially capable to the same degree while sober. And so they need that to grease the wheels, right? And it hurts for me to see that because, you know, I grew up in a household that had alcoholism. And to see the effects of that was really quite sad. I know quite a few people who died from alcohol. And to see the choices people make under the influence of this is also very disturbing. And so it's kind of like one of those things, right? When you care so much, you stop doing things because you see the harm in them. It kind of alienates you, right? I don't drink. I don't do any of that. And the amount of, I don't get invited to things anymore because, you know, like most people drink when they hang out, right? And if you're not the one drinking, you're a little bit off. And so why don't I drink? I don't drink because, for one, it's going to make me age more. It's going to kill me. It's going to slowly make me worse and worse and worse in health, right? And in the future, if I have a kid or anything like that, it's going to give me less time with them. And so I care to the extent that I'm thinking about these children I don't even have yet. Or, you know, even to the degree of like, oh, okay, I have a wife or something, right? And then my liver fails because I was drinking so heavily. Or, you know, I do some bad things because I was drinking. You know, it's just, I don't do these things because they're inherently negative and there's no positive to them. And people don't seem to understand that. You know, the more you care, the more you're misunderstood. You know, there's certain levels of caring, right? There's people who are like, oh, I care about you. Like, oh, you're not doing okay. Oh, how you doing, bud? But then there's another level of like, I situate my life around the greatest good of everyone in the future, including myself, right? You know, it's actually one of the benefits. The more you care about how other people are going to have you in the future, the more you actually inevitably help yourself in the current moment, right? You know, this can go for a lot of things, like, you know, casually encountering people and stuff like that. It protects you from diseases if you don't do that, you know? And you don't have to deal with your future wife getting whatever disease you did with your stupid choices, right? And there's a lot of consequences for the choices you make now that people don't seem to really care about. And when I say these opinions, they're actually quite controversial. You know, if I say don't hook up, don't drink, don't do any of these things, people would be like, oh, why not? They won't say why not. They'll just be like, oh, wow, you prude, or you whatever, you incel, or whatever they want to say, right? And so it's not actually along those lines. It's more so I care enough to not do these things because I don't want my future partner to get a worse version of me. And so you will be misunderstood if you care a lot. You will. People just simply will not understand you because most people aren't looking that far in the future. Most people are looking to tomorrow at most. You know, they might think, oh, I'm going to wake up hungover, but they're not thinking like 5 years, 10 years down the line. And so I find that the more I care about myself, the more I care about others, which is a double-sided blade. You know, I hold this high standard for myself, And I find myself holding others to that standard, and people very, very rarely meet it. And it creates a lot of disillusionment in the world, for me, at least personally. And there was a point in my life where I was very mentally unhealthy, like deeply mentally unhealthy. I would stay awake at night to avoid people, right? And I would like tiptoe. I would walk on the tips of my toes to be very quiet because I didn't want to disturb anyone else. And I would stay awake at night because I thought my presence in the household was a bad thing. I thought I was a burden to be existing in the household. And so there comes a point where you care so much that you become self-destructive, and there's obviously a fine line there. And maybe not so fine, but it was a line that I had to deal with at one point. And you find yourself very much having a hard time forgiving yourself for the past mistakes you've made. You know, like I mentioned earlier, the worm I accidentally killed, or the rabbit I hit with my car in high school, you know, those are things that I didn't have any control over, but I still feel guilt over them to this day. And you'll constantly blame yourself for stuff that you really shouldn't hold on to forever, because it's really more damaging than good. You can make amends with it, but you should not be holding on to it forever. You know, even to the extent of like, I remember how I treated people when I was younger. I wasn't very nice when I was a teenager. And I wasn't mean either, but like, I don't know. Like, I remember my first girlfriend, right? You know, we were playing a video game and she was struggling with it. I'm like, why are you struggling with it? Are you like stupid or something? You know, I say something like that, and I remember it to this day. And it's just like, I still feel kind of bad about it. Another example I think is really important to say is letting go of people is a really crucial thing. You know, the longer you hold on to someone that you really shouldn't be holding on to, the more you're going to hurt yourself and them. And so to care requires a lot of strength at times. Sometimes you got to make hard choices that you don't actually fully want to make, but you have to, because if you really do care deeply, you're not going to lead people on. You're not going to do these things, right? You know, I was talking to my friend the other day, and he said something very, very wise. You know, I find myself trying to, you know, like I get hate comments here and there, right? And I find myself in the past arguing with them. And, you know, I told my friend how much it bothers me and how I try helping them. And he's like, you know, you're actually doing a disservice to all the people who want help by spending your time on these people who don't want it. And so, in a way, I was being wrong in my doings with how I proceeded with trying to help people, because that's all I want to do at the end of the day. You know, people who are leaving hate comments, I assume they don't fully understand, or they're a little bit emotionally unregulated, because it's a video. Who's getting angry at a video? I mean, if you're upset at a video, I would hate to see how regular life is treating you, because it's a lot more difficult in real life than it is to be watching some random video on YouTube. And so, okay, what's the point here? The point is, it's okay to care deeply. I think everyone should care deeply. I really do. Even if it's not the case, I think everyone should. Because the second we all stop caring, it's when the world falls apart. To care is the most important thing. But there is a line. Don't be self-destructive in your care, and don't let your care come into contempt, right? Don't let your standard for goodness corrupt the way you see other people. I've fallen into that myself a lot. You know, I'll see someone who's participated in certain things, you know, and at a certain point, I'll have to stop myself in my mind to really make sure I don't classify them as just that thing. You know, when I see people who use others, right, I'll automatically see them as just that, when I think it's quite narrow-minded, because a lot of people use other people more than you'd realize. I see this a lot with guys specifically, actually. Girls do the same, but it's different. Guys will use girls for their bodies a lot of times, and I see that, and it's actually quite sad, because I don't think they would want their wife to have that experience, but yet they're giving that experience to other people. It's quite sad. You know, women, you know, they'll gold dig off of guys sometimes. Not all of them. I'm not saying all of them for any of these, but they'll do that, and then they'd be upset if in the future their husband got scammed out of all their money by some random woman or something. You know, it's kind of like, you know, don't do things that you wouldn't want done to you or your future partner. It's kind of like, or your future kids, you know. It's kind of simple, right? And at the end of the day, I really do think most people care more than they probably say. I think a lot of people don't know how to navigate helping someone. Like if someone isn't actually helping, like, okay, let's say your parents don't really give you attention, they don't really help you, they don't seem to really care about you. I'll say this, they do care about you, but they probably don't come from a time where they know how to communicate well. They don't come from a time where they know how to navigate the emotional field and all this stuff, because certain generations really grew up with the pull yourself up by the bootstrap mentality. Like, oh, you're down? Well, pick yourself back up, right? And there's not a lot of nuance around the ideas of trauma and certain mental issues and stuff like that and how to navigate them, right? And so don't let your empathy, don't let your care turn into apathy and condemnation, because you really got to realize at the end of the day, people are just doing what they think is right or doing the best they can. There is some people who are malicious, but it's a mass minority. Most people are too busy focused on what they have going on in their life and all the things that they have to do. And so any lack of care is not intentional. It's probably more so more so a cause of them being too busy with their own life. Because look at your life. You're probably pretty busy. I'm pretty busy. I mean, ask yourself this. When was the last time you checked up on your friends? Probably not that often, right? And so, like, if they don't do the same to you, I guess you can't really be all that upset. Make sure you hold yourself to the same standard you're holding others to. And just know, I care for all of you, and I hope everyone here helps make the world a better place, because honestly, I'm sure you guys have seen the news nowadays. The world definitely needs people to care again, because we all want to see a better place going forward, right?